I was broken. They tried to silence me, but I rose and the world listened. My name is Rachel, and for 32 years, I believed I was living a normal life until one phone call shattered everything. It was a calm Sunday afternoon when the hospital rang. "Mrs. Collins," a voice said, "your mother has been admitted." I rushed there, heart pounding, memories swirling. Mom had always been my rock-strong, smart, distant at times, but fiercely protective. I never imagined this moment would be the start of a truth so twisted it would leave me questioning everything. As I sat by her hospital bed, watching her breathe through the oxygen mask, she suddenly opened her eyes. "Rachel," she whispered, "there's something you need to know before I go." My heart sank. "Don't say that," I begged. But she continued, "You're not who you think you are." I froze. "What do you mean?" Her hand trembled as she reached for mine. "You were never supposed to find out, but there's a letter in the attic. Read it after I'm gone. My name is Rachel, and for 32 years, I believed I was living a normal life until one phone call shattered everything. It was a calm Sunday afternoon when the hospital rang. "Mrs. Collins," a voice said, "your mother has been admitted." I rushed there, heart pounding, memories swirling. Mom had always been my rock-strong, smart, distant at times, but fiercely protective. I never imagined this moment would be the start of a truth so twisted it would leave me questioning everything. The letter said, "Rachel, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer alive. The truth is, you're not my biological daughter. You were left at the hospital the day you were born. I adopted you because I fell in love with you the moment I saw you. I didn't want you to grow up alone like I did, but your real parents, they're still alive." I couldn't breathe. I wasn't her daughter. My entire life was a lie. Tears blurred my vision. A part of me screamed that this couldn't be true, but another part deep inside whispered that things suddenly made sense. The way she'd always looked at me with guilt in her eyes, the absence of baby photos, the quiet pain behind her smile. I reread the letter, hoping it would change, but it didn't. There was more. Their names are Daniel and Evelyn Marshall. They live in New York. They tried to find you. They deserve to know you're okay. 4 days, I wandered through my life like a ghost. I couldn't tell anyone, not even my feet. I stared at the ceiling at night, imagining these people my birth parents. Did they look like me? Did they think of me every birthday? Had they suffered all these years? I finally made the decision. I had to find them. Not for closure, but for truth. If I didn't face this, I would never truly know who I was. I found them faster than I expected. Google, social media, public records, Daniel and Evelyn Marshall, a couple in their 60s. No other children. My hands trembled as I typed the message. "Hello? I believe I may be your daughter. I have something important to share." I hit send. Minutes felt like hours. When they replied, my heart almost stopped. "Please call us. We've waited 32 years to hear from you." The phone call lasted 2 hours. We cried, laughed, paused in disbelief. They told me how I was taken from the hospital hours after birth, how the case went cold, how they spent their lives hoping I was alive. They never stopped searching. I asked them everything: why, how, who. Their pain was still raw, but their joy at hearing my voice was overwhelming. They wanted to meet. I agreed, though my heart raced with fear and guilt. I flew to New York the next week. Standing outside their house felt like a dream. Evelyn opened the door first. Her eyes widened, filled with tears. "Rachel," she whispered. I nodded, and she pulled me into the tightest hug I've ever known. Daniel joined moments later, his hands shaking as he touched my face like he couldn't believe I was real. We didn't speak for a long time. We just held each other, letting years of pain melt away. But reunions aren't perfect. That night, as we talked more, they told me something that changed everything again. "The woman who raised you, we knew her," Evelyn said. "She wasn't just a stranger. She was the nurse that delivered you. She told us you died during birth, but she took you." My blood ran cold. My mother, no. The woman I thought was my mother had stolen me. The grief turned to betrayal in an instant. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman who raised me, who kissed my scraped knees, helped me through school, held me through heartbreak, was also the one who stole me from my real parents. My mind rejected it, but Evelyn and Daniel had documents, police reports, and even an old photo of the nurse, my mother. The resemblance was undeniable. I wanted to scream, cry, run, but I just sat there, numb. Daniel handed me a worn-out manila envelope. Inside were pages from the investigation, a photo of me as a baby, hospital records, a missing child report, everything they had kept, hoping one day I'd return. We tried everything, Evelyn whispered. She vanished with you, changed her name, moved states, but we never stopped looking. Their pain was real. I saw it in their eyes, and for the first time, I realized I was part of two stories, one built on love, the other on lies. Back at the hotel, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, my mother smiling, cooking, laughing, and stealing me. I wanted to hate her, but how could I? She'd given me a good life. She loved me, didn't she? Or was it obsession, delusion? My heart battled with my mind. I picked up the phone and called my fiancé. For the first time, I told him everything. He was silent for a moment, then whispered, "Whatever happens, I'm with you." The next day, I returned to Evelyn and Daniel's house. I need to know why she did it, I told them. I need to understand. Danielle Nadaj, she wasn't evil. Rachel, just broken. Her file said she lost a baby a week before you were born. Maybe something snapped. That crushed me. My entire life, I was her second chance at motherhood. Was I loved? Or just a replacement? I didn't know what to feel anymore. Anger, grief, compassion. I flew back home with a storm inside me. At the airport, everything felt different. Families walking together, children laughing, it all felt surreal. I drove straight to the cemetery, stood in front of a grave. Why? I asked aloud. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you take me? No answer came, just the rustling wind. I laid flowers down. I loved you, I whispered, but I deserve the truth now. I walked away with tears streaming down my face. Over the next few weeks, I tried to balance both worlds, visiting Evelyn and Daniel while still grieving the woman who raised me. It was exhausting. Some days I felt whole. Others, like a stranger in my own skin. My fiancé suggested therapy. At first I refused, but eventually I went. And I'm glad I did. Talking about it helped me untangle the emotions of guilt, confusion. Slowly, I began to heal. One evening, while going through more of her old things, I found a hidden diary, tucked between books, dusty and fragile. The first entry was dated a week after my birth. I hesitated, then opened it. Her words jumped off the page. I know what I did was wrong, but I couldn't bear to let her go. She was mine the moment I held her. I'll love her better than anyone ever could. Page after page, she poured her heart out. She wrote about sleepless nights, the fear of being caught, the guilt that haunted her. But mostly, she wrote about me, my first steps, my first words. The day I said, I love you. Each entry was filled with love. Obsessive, yes, but undeniably real. I cried for her. For me, for the twisted love that brought us together and tore us apart. She wasn't a monster. She was a broken woman who made a terrible choice and lived with it every day. With time, I began to rebuild. I grew closer to Daniel and Evelyn. They never pressured me. They just loved me. We celebrated holidays together, shared stories, created new memories. I showed them baby photos, school pictures, told them about the life I had. We cried, we laughed. It was healing for all of us. Slowly, the pieces of my identity began to fit together, not perfectly, but honestly, I stopped running from my past. I started owning it. A year later, I stood at my wedding, both my families present, Evelyn holding one hand, my late mother-esque photo pinned inside my dress. I walked down the aisle with love from all sides. When I said I do, it wasn't just to the man I loved, but to the life I had finally chosen to embrace. A life with truth, with pain, with healing, and above, a real messy, powerful love. The kind that survives even the most unthinkable betrayal. Life after the wedding felt like a new chapter one I wrote with intention. I continued therapy, met with Evelyn and Daniel often, and even started writing a memoir. Friends who once knew only half my story were stunned when they heard the truth. Some cried with me. Others couldn't believe it. But no one turned away. In sharing my story, I found not just healing but strength. My pain had a purpose. And that purpose was to help others feel less alone. One day, I received a message from a woman whose child had also been abducted years ago. "Reading your story gave me hope," she wrote. I wept. My tragedy wasn't just my own anymore. It had become a light in someone else's darkness. I connected with groups advocating for missing children and mental health. I started speaking publicly. Each time I stood on stage, my hands shook. But each chimi, someone would thank me afterward, and it made it worth it. Still, not everything was easy. Some nights, I'd wake up from dreams of being taken, of my mother crying, of being lost again. My husband would hold me close, whispering, "You're safe now." I learned that healing isn't linear. Grief comes in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes crashing, but I no longer drowned in it. I floated, I breathed, I lived, and that was a victory in itself. Evelyn once asked me, "Do you ever hate her?" I thought for a moment. "No," I said softly. "I hate what she did, but I loved her, and I always will." That was a complicated truth. Love and pain intertwined. Forgiveness wasn't forgetting. It was choosing peace over poison. I let go of the anger not because you deserved it, but because I did. I needed space for joy, for growth, for love, and that space couldn't exist if it was still filled with rage. Years passed. I became a mother myself. The day I held my daughter for the first time, everything came rushing back: the joy, the fear, the fierce need to protect. I understood her in a way I never had before, but I also knew what I would never do. I would never lie, never steal someone else's child to heal my own wounds. I would raise my daughter in truth, in safety, in love that didn't come at someone else's expense. I named my daughter Hope. It felt right. She was the light after a long storm, the symbol of everything I had survived. My parents fallen, and Daniel became doting grandparents. I told Hope stories of both her grandmothers, the one who raised me and the one who searched for me. She knew their names, their faces, their love. I didn't erase the past, I wove it into something whole, something honest, something beautiful. On the 10th anniversary of my mother's death, I returned to her grave. Hope came with me. We placed sunflowers, her favorite. I read a letter aloud. "You were lost, and so was I, but I found myself, and I forgive you." The wind carried my words. Hope held my hand. I felt peace not because everything made sense, but because I had made peace with not knowing everything. I didn't need all the answers. I just needed the strength to move forward. Looking back now, I see a life full of contradictions, joy born from pain, love tangled with betrayal, truth forged from lies. But that's life, isn't it? It's never clean. It's never easy. It's messy, heartbreaking, breathtaking, and somehow all of it matters. All of it builds us into who we are meant to be. I'm not a victim. I'm not just a survivor. I'm a storyteller, a truth teller, a mother, a daughter, a woman who found light in the darkest places. If you're reading this and you feel broken, if your story has cracks, if your past feels too painful to hold, I want you to know this. You are not alone. Your truth matters. Your pain matters. But so does your healing. So does your joy. There is life after the unraveling. There is strength and softness, and there is always a path forward, even when it begins with loss. You can write your story again. You can be whole. This is my truth. Not perfect, not clean, but real, and real is enough. I carry my past not as a burden, but as a lesson. I wear my scars as proof of survival, and I speak my story aloud not for sympathy, but for connection, for courage, for clarity, because silence keeps us trapped, but truth sets us free. And I am free now. Finally, completely free. Months after releasing my story, I received an invitation to speak at a national mental health conference. I almost declined. I wasn't sure I was ready, but something in me said, go. When I stood on that stage, The room fell silent, and when I finished, they stood up. Not for applause, but for the truth I had lived. That moment told me I wasn't just healing, I was helping others heal too. My pain had become power, and that power had purpose. I started a nonprofit, The Second Sunrise, dedicated to helping children who had survived trauma, abduction, and betrayal. We offered therapy, art, workshops, and safe spaces to be heard. I met kids who looked just like I did, ones lost, confused, scared, and I told them, "You are not broken. You are brave." Their eyes lit up. I saw hope reborn over and over again. And in giving them my story, I took back control of it for myself. One evening, after a long day at the center, I tucked Hope into bed. She asked, "Mommy, were you ever scared as a little girl?" I hesitated then. I said, "Yes, very." But even when I was scared, I was never alone. She smiled and hugged me tight. That night, I realized something. I had rewritten my legacy. My daughter would grow up knowing honesty, safety, and unconditional love. And that was everything I had once needed myself. A journalist reached out to profile me for a national magazine. She said, "Your story needs to be told in full." I agreed, but only if it included not just the pain, but the healing, the love, the transformation. When the article came out, my inbox flooded with messages from people around the world. Mothers, fathers, even former abductors seeking redemption. It was overwhelming, but also it was confirmation. I was doing something that mattered. One letter stood out. A woman wrote, "I was the other woman once. I helped steal a child, thinking I was saving someone. Now, I live with that guilt every day. Your forgiveness gave me hope." I didn't know what to say at first, but I replied, "Change is possible. Redemption is real. Keep choosing the light." I wasn't excusing the past, but I was choosing not to let it chain me. That's what forgiveness really means. It's a form of freedom. Every year, on the anniversary of my return to my birth parents, we celebrate what we call Truth Day. It's not a sad day. It's a reminder that no matter how dark things become, truth can still break through. We release sky lanterns and write notes of gratitude. Hopi loves it. She says, it's like sending love to the sky. And maybe it is a quiet way to say, we remember, we honor, we move forward. Not everyone supported my story being so public. Some distant relatives accused me of exploiting my past. Others said I should let it go. But I knew the truth. Silence protects abusers. Telling the truth protects survivors. I wasn't reliving my pain, I was transforming it. And if that made people uncomfortable, maybe they needed to sit with that discomfort, because healing doesn't come from silence. It comes from being brave enough to speak. One day, I was invited back to the small town where I had grown up under my abductor's care. I hadn't been back since the funeral. I was terrified, but I went. I walked past my old school, the library she used to take me to, the park we played in. It felt like walking through someone else's memories. And in a way, I grieved not just for what I lost, but for what I thought I had. And then I let it go. I met with the woman's sister while I was there. She cried when she saw me. "We had no idea," she said. "She always spoke of you like her real daughter." I nodded, unsure what to feel. She handed me a small box. "She kept this for you." Inside was a bracelet I'd made in second grade, a photo of us, and a note. "I'm sorry. I wish I had been enough." I wept. It didn't fix anything, but it gave me closure. Back home, I placed the bracelet in a memory box beside photos of both my mothers. My life is not a straight line. It's a tapestry threads of love, loss, betrayal, truth, and healing. And every knot, every tear, every stitch makes it stronger, makes me stronger. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I do know this. The human heart is resilient. We break, we rebuild, we begin again and again. Again, the nonprofit continued to grow. We expanded to 5 cities, helping hundreds of kids every year. I hired therapists, social workers, and even survivors like me to mentor others. Every time a child whispered, "Thank you for believing me," I felt my purpose reaffirmed. I had once been voiceless. Now, I was making sure others didn't have to be Pain had turned into purpose, and purpose had become movement. One day, a girl named Lila came into our program, quiet, withdrawn, much like I had been. It took weeks before she said a word. When she did, she asked, "Do you think someone like me can be loved?" My heart broke. I knelt beside her and said, "You already are." She cried for the first time in months. Sometimes healing begins not with therapy, but with someone simply seeing you. I saw her, and I knew she'd one day see herself, too. At one event, I was honored with the National Humanitarian Award. I wore the same necklace my birth mother gave me the day I returned home. As I walked up on stage, I looked into the crowd, my parents, my husband, my daughter, even former foster families, all part of my journey. I said, I stand here not because I escaped my past, but because I embraced it and turned it into something bigger than me. Not all days were easy. Trauma is sneaky. It comes back in dreams, in sounds, in smells. But now I met those shadows with tools and support. And on the worst days, I reminded myself, I survived. I am safe. I am loved. I taught others the same affirmations. We turned pain into poetry, scars into stories, and slowly, one step at a time, we stopped just surviving. We started thriving. Hope turned 10. She asked if she could come volunteer at the center. "I want to help kids feel strong," she said. I smiled through tears. She was growing up kind, wise, and full of compassion. The cycle had broken. My daughter would never question her worth. That was my greatest victory, not the awards, not the articles, but raising a child who knew her truth and honored the truth of others. At a reunion event, I met a boy who reminded me of myself. He was quiet, always drawing. When I complimented his artwork, he smiled for the first time. "I want to draw my life like a comic book," he said. I told him, "Then make yourself the hero." His eyes lit up. That's the thing we don't always need to rescue. Sometimes we just need to remind someone they have the power to rescue themselves. Years passed. Our foundation became internationally recognized. But I stayed rooted in the small moments, the first smiles, the breakthroughs, the quiet victories. That's where real change lived. Not in headlines, but in hearts. I no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. I wasn't the broken girl anymore. I was the woman who rose, who built, who gave back. That identity couldn't be taken. It had been earned. One day, I returned to the lake where I was once found. Alone, I sat on the edge of the dock and tossed in a pebble. Ripples danced across the surface. I thought about everything that had led me here, every scar, every lie, every truth. I whispered, "Thank you, not to the pain, but to the strength it revealed." Sometimes the deepest healing comes not from forgetting, but from honoring how far you've come. I published a memoir. It wasn't easy reliving the past again on paper, but I did it for every person, still trapped in silence. I titled it, "The Light Between the Lies." When it hit bestseller lists, I cried not for the success, but for the voices it uplifted. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was ours, a chorus of survivors refusing to be quiet. We were here. We were healing. We were heard. Now, I speak in schools, hospitals, shelters. My story has traveled farther than I ever imagined, but I always return home to tuck hope in, kiss my husband goodnight, and sit quietly with myself. The girl I was, the woman I've become, and all the versions in between. My story is still being written, but I know this. I am not a victim. I am not just a survivor. I am the author now. A young woman approached me after a speech. She was shaking. "Your story? ... It's mine too," she said. I held her hand and we cried together. In that moment, I realized our power doesn't come from pretending we're okay. It comes from showing our wounds and still standing. From saying, "Me too," and meaning, "You're not alone." That was the true revolutions of passion over silence. Hope asked me once, "Why do you tell everyone your secrets?" I told her, "Because secrets grow in darkness. But truth grows in the light." She nodded, thoughtful beyond her years. Watching her bloom was like watching the version of me that never got to be free. She would never carry my chains. She would only carry my courage. That was the legacy I was building. My husband found my old journals one evening. He read them with tears in his eyes. "I wish I could have protected you back then," he said. I smiled and told him, "You protect me now." He never tried to fix me. He simply stayed. He loved every broken and healed part of me. In a world that once ignored my pain, he saw me and reminded me every day I was worthy of love, exactly as I was. I revisited my foster homes one by one. Some welcomed me with hugs and tears. Others avoided my gaze. But I wasn't there for revenge. I was there for closure. Forgiveness isn't forgetting it. Freeing yourself from carrying what was never yours to hold. I laid flowers on doorsteps, whispered my goodbyes, and walked away. Lighter, stronger, ready for whatever came next. I started training counselors on trauma-informed CARDI. I told them, don't ask what's wrong with them. Ask what happened to them. That shift changes lives. We are not our behaviors. We are our histories, our battles, our recoveries. The more people learn to see with empathy instead of judgment, the more children were saved. This was systemic change, and it was only the beginning. Hope painted a mural at the center. Bright colors, swirling patterns, and in the middle, a phoenix. "It's you," she told me. You rose from the fire. I didn't cry, beamed. My daughter saw me not as a victim, but as a hero. And maybe, in her eyes, I had always been one. Sometimes, the greatest redemption isn't changing the past. It's shaping the future through those who believe in us. I was invited to speak at a global summit on child protection. As I walked onto the stage, I saw flags from every country waving in the wind. I thought of the girl who once felt invisible in a small dark room. Now, the world was listening. I began my speech with the words, "I was silenced." But now, I speak for those who still are. And in that moment, I felt unstoppable. Journalists began calling documentaries, podcasts, but I stayed grounded. Fame was never the goal. Healing was... I turned down offers that felt exploitative, said yes only when the mission stayed true. My story wasn't tea for entertainment, tea was for empowerment, for the silent, for the scared, for the ones still waiting for someone to tell them, you are not too broken to be whole. One winter night, I sat alone with a candle. I lit it for every child who didn't make it, whose stories ended too soon. I wept not just from grief, but from gratitude I had met it. And now, I carried them with me. Every step forward was for them. Every life I touched, every voice I amplified, their memory burned like that flame gentle, steady, and eternal. Now, when people ask me who I am, I don't list my trauma. I say I'm a mother, a wife, a healer, a fighter, a survivor, a storyteller, a voice. I am not just what happened to me. I am what I chose to become after. And to anyone still lost in the darkness, I say, keep going. Your story is not over. The ending isn't written yet. And maybe, just maybe, you'll rise too.